The Red Eye Radio podcast is a service of Freightliner and Detroit.
Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. This is Red Eye Radio.
All across America, 866-90 Red Eye. He's Eric Harley. I'm Gary McNamara. I'm just chuckling. I got to play this audio.
Okay. All right.
Greg Gutfeld from Fox News and The Five. This would have been from, I don't know if it was yesterday or the day before.
Okay.
Okay, because it was the testimony of the Senate and House is what he was commenting on. So this had to be yesterday as he was asked about his opinion of the grilling of Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg.
I think that was lip service. I think the lesson that Zuckerberg got, and most of America did who watched, is that we need term limits. We need term limits badly. 99% of those inquisitors didn't know squat about what they were talking about. It was the best argument for small government I've ever seen. I would have to say that the only person there that impressed me was Orrin Hatch. The bottom line, Facebook is free to use because it's an advertising-based product. We have people on our sales staff for TV shows and for magazines. They have to go to media buyers, and they have to present the demographic. We all understand this. The Five has a great demographic, affluent people who like to travel and like to entertain. So maybe we can get advertisers for automobiles or for cruise lines or for beer, because what we're doing is we're using our audience to attract advertisers, which pays for the shows so the viewers can use it. Facebook is exactly that model. And he had to explain that to these idiots. But the only person who got it was Orrin Hatch when he facetiously said, so Facebook is free, right? He goes, how do you pay for it? He goes, advertising. And then Hatch just smiled and looked around, basically saying, you guys are idiots.
I mean, why is it so difficult? Again, if anybody broke a law, let prosecutors go after it. But it's about that people started screaming.
I'm going to cry here.
And then there were some articles written about it. Then all of a sudden we've got to call Zuckerberg down. I'm no defender of Zuckerberg. I perfectly understand that his organization is a leftist organization and doesn't favor conservatives. I get it. I don't know why I need him to testify in front of elected representatives to do what? To dance around that question that I already know the answer to.
Explain the business model of advertising.
Well, and then there's the other thing. That's
the modern, today's business model of advertising.
What is it that you think that you're not paying for? I mean, when you sign up for Facebook and you start, because people have taken ownership in it to the extent that they believe, well, Facebook doesn't have the right to. Well, actually, they do. It's their website. They have a page dedicated to you if you'd like to, make one. But it's their company. You can decide to participate or not. So then from that, what is it that you think they do? They should give you something, and they should just have a huge website and not do anything with the data, with the behavioral patterns of what they may learn from the demographics
that you willingly input and make public.
How dare you monitor our habits? We being the people of, that basically, especially those that live on Facebook and post several times a day, every day, you're upset that they're going to do something with your data? Again, if we're talking about a breach where they didn't do their due diligence in protecting sensitive data that they are supposed to protect, then maybe there's some onus there. But that's not what we're talking about here.
And one of the things that we did point out, if you do want to blame Facebook, it's their constant harping about their business model as a community bringing together instead of being honest and saying, look, we're a business. We're a business. Of course we want, when you input your data, we're going to use it. We're going to use that data as part of the demographic or a part of the campaign that we bring to buyers out there, media buyers out there that will buy time. And we're going to take your demographic and we're going to fit it with an advertiser that we believe fits you. And we're going to try to sell you something because that's why you get it for free.
Right.
And Rich Lowry, New York Post, you weren't here yesterday when I read this, and I just want to read it for you in case you didn't read this portion of it. And he talks about the fact that, Facebook hasn't been willing to admit it. He goes, Facebook can't bear to admit that it has garnered the largest collection of data known to mankind to sell ads against and the line of and to sell ads against and to line the pockets of its founder and investors. The problem isn't that Zuckerberg is a businessman or an exceptionally gifted one, but that he pretends to have stumbled out of the lyrics of John Lennon's song Imagine. To listen to him, Facebook is all about connectivity and openness. He just happens to have made roughly $63 billion as a T-shirt wearing champion of the global community, whatever that means. It's this pose that makes him and other Facebook officials sound so shifty. In a rocky interview with Savannah Guthrie of the Today Show last week, Sheryl Sandberg was asked what product Facebook sells. She said, we're selling the opportunity to connect with people. She said, according to the Washington Post, before catching herself and saying, but it's not for sale. Well, something or other must be for sale, or Facebook is the first company to rocket to the top ranks of corporate America based on having no product or profit motive. Guthrie, persisting, stated that Facebook sweeps up data for the use of advertisers. Sandberg objected, we are not sweeping data. People are inputting data, end of quote. Well, then just to admit it, don't have people drag it out of you. Look, it's easy to, people have asked, I think people understand, for example, the business model that we have or any television station has. Mm-hmm. You're watching it, if you're watching your local TV station or you're listening to radio and it's not costing you anything, there's a reason for it.
Yeah, because there's ads.
There's ads.
Right.
It's the same thing with Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
And so part of it is the stupid questions, but part of it is also Facebook's fault for promoting this whole thing. And we understand because they're trying to brand, they're trying to brand to you or about the global community and everything else. But you're right. When Sheryl Sandberg said we're selling the opportunity to connect with people, she was telling you the truth. Oh, but it's not for sale. Yes, it is.
By the way, it's the very reason she was hired is because of the advertising model that she built at Google. It doesn't take anything to learn that either. That's the reason Zuckerberg hired her. Yeah. Advertising.
Yeah, look up. Exactly. Well, the business model of going to Google.
Right.
And I'm going to look for this thing. Oh, they're okay. I found this widget that I want. And the next month, that widget is all over everything that you go to on Google.
Right.
And as I've said, when that first started happening to me, I came on the air one day and I said, by the time I put something in, 95% of the time I'm buying it. I have an interest in it. Mm-hmm. So I buy it. And I said, so if I put something in Google, odds are I bought it the next day. And then for the next month, I'm being sold advertising for something that I've already bought. Mm-hmm. And I just said, okay, but I don't know what percentage of people haven't bought it, and so the constant reminder
because
is there over and over and over again.
The algorithm isn't going to learn that until you retrain the algorithm, which you can do through ad choices, and you can say, okay, I'm no longer interested in this. It doesn't pertain to me, or whatever. And by the way, that's also on social media. You have that opportunity, but it doesn't mean the ads are going to stop. They may be different types of ads.
Different types of ads, right.
And so the point being is that you could get to a point, I could see them, and wait for it, the premium version of Facebook. No ads.
Like apps?
Mm-hmm.
Apps exist right now. Do you want the non-ad,
YouTube? YouTube Red. That's what they do.
And what's the premium? No ads.
Right. So we'll have a clean experience, but somebody's still going to pay. Which is fine if they want to do that. I mean, this is what it's become. we jump into something and we become a customer or use something, then all of a sudden it's wrong. You know, that they're at any level taking advantage of their users. No, that's actually how money is made. They appeal to their users in a number of different ways. Again, you're not forced to be there. You're not.
I can just see the history books looking back on the second week of April of 2018 and the history books saying that was the moment that Congress finally came to the realization nothing is free.
Well, I mean, it's like John Boehner in his new role. He's suddenly changed, positions on marijuana and the use of medical marijuana. And because he's joined the board of a top cannabis corporation to promote the use of medical marijuana. Well, when I was Speaker of the House, money didn't play into it. Now it does. Because, it's kind of the point.
Which, look, I got to say it because everybody's thinking. I wonder how Boehner would have been a Speaker of the House if he was high. You and I remember.
Wait, would he have cried more or less?
Well, the reason I bring that up is I'll never forget the time, and I forgot what the issue was. But we were in the studios before this studio, and I remember that because you were looking at the Boehner came out, and you had the TV monitor, and you said Boehner's coming out, and we were like anticipating it, and he came out for like 30 seconds, and then turned around and walked away, and we're like,
wait a minute,
explain what you did.
Well, here's the thing: is that it was a unique opportunity. I forget what it was, but a unique opportunity to do that and have a really great set of points that could be the talking points for morning drive, television, radio, and media, and he completely just bungled it. It's like, man, you just blew the opportunity. Look, he's making points here about, medical marijuana and how it can help veterans and other people who need medical marijuana and all that. But, yeah, you weren't willing to listen the point being is that the money often changes things in American politics. It changes things in the private sector. But there's going to be somebody who's going to pay for things along the way. There's going to be a different tone that is set, which is the point, like you said, Gary, if Facebook came out and said, okay, we're going to start charging $4.99 a month, people would look differently at that contract.
Oh, yeah. And
not click the I agree, check mark in the box and move on so quickly because they would realize, oh, okay. And if they did a pop-up on every question, that's, covered, I guess, every point and point of agreement in that agreement, overall agreement. If they did a question on each of them, I wonder how people would answer. Because, again, people don't care. They think, well, it's my page. I own it. Well, you don't. You don't own the domain. It's got your name on it. Your pictures are on it. It looks like you own it, but you don't own it. You could go buy your own domain. That you would own. But, it's that idea that all of a sudden, the world is ending. We've said it, I don't know for how long, but for several years. You want to get people's attention, do this, do this, do this. And we've made the point with Facebook. If you want to lose an election, promise people you're going to create a law that will force Facebook to start charging every month. You'll lose that election. If you want to tank an election, go out there and put that on your platform. Because that's where we live today. You can mess with this, you can mess with that. The debt, we don't care about. Facebook, get Zuckerberg in front of Congress now.
866-90-RED-EYE.
When it comes to rainy weather, are your tires ready to roll? Springtime showers can lead to unsafe driving conditions, but maintaining your tires can help increase your safety during these circumstances. Maintaining adequate tread depths and air pressure levels is essential to driving safely in wet weather conditions. Proper tread depths help avoid the standing water between the road and the tire. Inspect your tires to ensure that your tires meet or exceed the DOT tread depth standards. Check your air pressure levels regularly to make sure they're properly inflated. Improperly inflated tires can result in reduced traction and less control, which is the last thing you want during a downpour. While you can't control the weather, you can control how often you check your tires for suitable air pressure levels and tread depths.
This maintenance tip is a service of Valvoline HD. When the going gets tough, you need a motor oil you can count on.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90-RED-EYE on Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Let us head to you. We go to Mark in Chicago. Mark, hi. You're on Red Eye Radio. Welcome to the show about Facebook. Hi.
Hi, Gary. Hi, Eric.
Hey.
Yeah, I'm calling in on this. I hope you guys are hungry. I'm opening a big can of worms, identity theft worms, when it comes to all this. Hey, can I first ask you a quick question?
Yes.
Sure.
Yeah, are you both co-hosts, or who's the host?
Neither one of us is either co-host or host.
Oh, okay.
We're two minds melded into one.
Yeah, we're actually not real
I
people.
like about your show.
Yeah, we're an algorithm.
Yeah. That.
Yeah. Let me, Eric, answer that question for the way he did for one reason. We've never asked that question.
Yeah, we actually have not ever.
No,
We started.
let me interject here. Careful, you guys. On this topic, this call is being recorded
And being monitored. Being monitored by government agencies.
Everything we say.
I myself am, and I don't know if I have a minute or I got to make a quick comment.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, it occurred to me a better story with Facebook. When that Larson ice shelf broke off in the Antarctica.
Yes.
I'm kind of a news junkie, and I follow artificial intelligence, which I guess is the government. And I had been informed that these agencies like NOAA and the National Weather Service had to start signing privacy agreements. And I'm like, wow, when I was in rocket science, I used to have to do that, but why they have to do it? So I get home. It's like 2 a.m, wake up, I look, this ice shelf breaks in. I put a comment on AccuWeather, right? And then all of a sudden, they start disappearing, and I'm blocked. And I'm like, what the heck? Well, it had to do with Facebook, and Facebook flagged it as spam. And I'm like, spam? All I did was cite that the reason it broke off is because I've been tracking it for years, and NASA, I just went to a report waiting for it to get on the air, that they'd say nothing about the underground volcanic activity. Molten rocks like 1,100, 2,200 degrees, and ice will melt, around 32. And these things been melting for years underneath, since 2002 as well.
Right, but we're limited on time, but why did the algorithm view you as spam?
I think it was in these hearings, because I watched it on C-SPAN. With the artificial intelligence, I think it flagged me as a fake account because I put false things, and the reason I called in is I use different birth dates. And a friend yesterday, I have a bunch of coupons I printed out for my birthday right now this month, and I get 3 things. And he goes, that's not right, your birthday's not now. I go, well, they only allow me 1 birth date, so I put it down. So when it comes to identity theft, it's going to be really tough with me because I only put a little bit of money in a debit card.
All right, well,
and if you get anyone,
right, but getting back to the whole thing of Facebook,
yeah,
and you and I have talked about that. How is Facebook ever going to stop fake accounts to begin with?
Well, they're not, and that's I think the last caller just pointed out anybody can create a fake account, and identity theft itself could lead to a fake account on a very large level with any given company.
They live the life. They walk the walk. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley. Red Eye Radio.
And he is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara, 866-90 Red Eye. Welcome, and good morning. The other thing I wanted to bring up here is a source present at the taping says James Comey's interview with ABC's George Stephanopoulos, airing Sunday at 10 p.m. as a 2020 special, is going to shock the president and his team. The source said Comey's comments in his first interview since being fired by President Trump last May will generate headlines and certainly add more meat to the charges swirling around Trump. In an ABC promo, Stephanopoulos says Comey compared Trump to a mob boss. Some describe the experience as surreal. The question will be how to fit it all into a one-hour show.
Mm-hmm.
So as you and I, said about an hour ago when we were just promoting that, if he uses the term mob boss, it's a completely different narrative than when he testified before Congress.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so you get to the point of, okay, now you're in front of the media here, you're playing games, you're trying to sell a book, or were you not a law enforcement officer, but a political operative who would view somebody in that type of emotional way?
Well, what I want to know is about the culture at the FBI while he was director.
Yes.
And I think we're getting a clear picture of it. Because there's no way you can tell me Peter Strzok did the things that he is said to have done, sent those messages, and behaved the way he behaved without the director knowing.
Mm-hmm.
There's no way you can convince me of that. So if the director knew, he either A, condoned it and even was a part of it, or he ignored it and was incompetent.
And the first thing I thought of, when I saw that, when I read that, I said, whoa. And many have said that him coming out with a book and doing this and answering questions could end up coming back in his
I said it about a month ago.
Yeah.
This is something that maybe he should tread lightly with because it's going to tell a lot about him. Although, for me, in his testimony before Congress, I saw it. I knew it. It's not going to be a surprise, but it will be, if anybody needs confirmation, it will be that confirmation of that kind of culture and tone that was set at the FBI under his direction. And then we can, go on and have the conversations about Loretta Lynch. Because ABC is going to be focused on what he thinks about Trump. I mean, it's the whole book. My question is, wait a minute. What conversations did you actually have with Loretta Lynch? What conversations did you have with your deputy director? What was the culture like? But the thing is he's not going to answer those questions.
And my first thought was, well, he's not a mob boss, and he's not a mob boss. Is he? Is he requiring hits, or is he a dominant figure? Is a dominant figure and somebody wanting control of his own presidency a mob boss, or is that an emotional reaction that you exaggerate that Donald Trump is president of the United States? That's an emotional response, and if you're that emotional now, then how are you as FBI director? Is that part of the culture that we see that existed in the Department of Justice and in the FBI and specifically the FBI in his case, of your underlings and what was going on there?
Well, and remember how people were offended about Ted Cruz during the primary, Ted Cruz saying he's a liberal from New York, being, Donald Trump.
Right.
Well, how dare you? Well, wait a minute. The former FBI director just characterized a man from New York as a mob boss. Is there going to be that same man, I'm offended kind of thing?
Well, it might be from Trump supporters, yeah.
Well, it was the liberals who were screaming when Ted Cruz said he's a New York liberal. Well, how dare you go after New Yorkers? Well, here's a guy from New York, and you're calling him a mob boss. Why? Because of the way he talks. It's certainly not based on anything he's done.
Right. Because that's quite an accusation. If you compare him to a mob boss commits what? Hits.
Right.
Is that the accusation?
Right.
Has Donald Trump had the CIA put out hits on people he dislikes?
Here's the thing. You have yet, in fact, it was in part your efforts, Mr. Comey, that have yet to lead to any criminal wrongdoing, even pointing to it. In fact, your guy, Mueller, has recently said that the president himself, at this point, is not the focus of a criminal investigation. Yet he's a mob boss. You should call Mueller, Mr. Comey, and ask him.
Right.
Because clearly, if he's a mob boss, then there's got to be a whole list of things. I mean, I guess we can start with the old racketeering charge or something, right? Certainly there's some kind of criminal event that you can point to before you label him as a mob boss, or is that only because he's from New York and the way he talks?
Now, is he a mob boss, and so you didn't go after him because no reasonable prosecutor would actually do that?
Right, right.
I don't know. I just, with the Hillary thing. And
yeah,
there it is right there. Law being broken. Yeah, but the intent. Well, the intent was actually the putting it in to hide from the system. That's
right.
The intent right there.
Right.
You're saying if she didn't have an intent to sell the the top secret stuff to the Russians, then there was no criminal intent. No, Mr. Comey, the criminal intent was putting the server in your house.
Mm-hmm.
That's the criminal intent.
Mm-hmm.
So it'd be interesting to see. But as soon as I saw that, he's going to compare him to a mob boss. Really? Why? Because of his personality? And if that's the case, or because he wishes to be dominant in his presidency, really? That makes you a mob boss? You wish to have control? You look and you say, wait a minute. To this date, over a year later, there isn't one specific accusation of law-breaking, of colluding with the Russians. You saw that. You know that. Would you be angry if you were the president and said, look, I want to get on with the business of the day? Is that a reasonable opinion for a president to have after all this time? And especially when we find out it was actually the Democrats and the Hillary campaign that actually colluded with the Russians by funneling the money through to Christopher Steele to get the unverified information from the Russians in order to destroy the Donald Trump campaign. Donald Trump knows that. We've known that for a while now. He shouldn't be upset.
And by the way, it now explains why the former director, when he was sitting before Congress, said, and he had that fake, almost Cory Booker fake outrage moment. There is no doubt that the Russian involvement goes all the way to the top in terms of interfering with the elections. I'm sorry, would that be to the top of the United States government or the Russian government, Mr. Comey? Now I know why he was so confident in that answer. Now we all know why. Now we can go back and we can look at documents that we actually have. Nobody's done anything about them yet.
Well, it's interesting that he's calling him a mob boss, yet he was the one that told Trump 3 times he wasn't under any type of criminal investigation.
Right. And Mueller recently said the same thing.
Right. So what's the mob boss thing about?
Certainly you've got something on it.
Unless it's just an emotional reaction.
Yeah, and the way he talks.
And should there be an emotional reaction from somebody who was a law enforcement officer in his analyzing of a extremely, serious situation, and should there be an emotional response from a director where we knew his underlings were clearly anti-Trump and made it clear that they were anti-Trump and made it clear something had to be done?
Yeah.
Well, you knew the hatred existed. Does this help? I guess this is my point. Does this help Comey's cause?
Well, Comey and in that whole, grandstand before Congress, talking about protecting the integrity of the agency. And the first thing he does is runs out and sends info to his buddy, And then the next thing he does is writes a book. I'm sorry, Mr. Comey. Didn't you say you wanted to protect the integrity of those agents in the field? How is that again that you're doing that?
It is pretty bizarre.
Because you're acting like a teenager.
I know.
I mean, if you're talking, I'm talking about his own standard. And, of course, the tone, that culture, that under his direction at the FBI is very clear and should be clear to everyone now. And if it's not, then you do need to watch that interview on Sunday night.
866-90-RED-EYE.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-EYE.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley. I'm Gary McNamara. Got to go to this. We go to Janet in Long Island. Janet, welcome. You're on Red Eye Radio. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I love your program. I just want to remind you of the meeting they had together, the two of them. Remember, he said, "Are you going to be loyal to me? I want your loyalty." That's it. That's the problem. That's why he calls him a mob boss. That's the reason.
That's the problem, because a president expects loyalty?
That's the word. You're going to see.
Is that a problem?
No, it's not a problem, but that's the word loyalty. All the mob people had to be loyal.
Oh,
well, I'll tell you this.
I see.
A lot of other people besides the mob uses loyalty.
Well,
talks about loyalty.
Look, I watch The Sopranos. I know how it works. They also eat lasagna or, other things. And so anybody who eats lasagna, be careful. There could be an investigation.
Okay. All right. I think she was a little tongue-in-cheek.
Yes,
I thought she was really serious.
Yes, exactly. It's no, she's right, though.
Right. You're right.
Because
you're
that's
right.
what the media. No, she's absolutely right. That the media turned that into. Oh, that sounds like somebody leaning on the director. And I just love that the media believes that they're going to get away with that with critical thinking people, and they're not. And Janet wasn't about to fall for it then.
Well,
and still is.
Well, here's the other thing, too. I mean, to me, that would be a logical question, because you're not talking about somebody who you handpicked. You're talking about the FBI director who was coming in from from another administration, and somebody who has already testified, and that you are under investigation. And the whole point is, are you going to be and your fear that they've been a political operative. Because of the history of Comey, that he has been a political operative, actually, that is a question that you would ask. Look, I'm not going to say to break the law, but are you going to be loyal to this administration or the last administration?
Well, because
is this about politics? Because that's a logical question.
Well, I think it is, because if you look at the laws that they decided they weren't going to under the attorneys general under Obama. Look at the laws they decided they weren't going to enforce. And look how they were going to go after states for trying to keep Arizona, trying to keep their people safe. Look at what they were doing in terms of suing school districts or groups where they wanted to give parents a choice in their children's education.
But specifically him, the FBI director, it would be the fact of, look, I look at the Hillary thing here, because I could only hit him for his loyalty on what he was responsible for.
Well, but he served under the attorneys general of Obama.
Right.
So you have to know that, look, I expect you to know what our mission statement is going to be and be loyal to that mission statement at my Justice Department.
The whole Hillary thing looked like politics played something involved in it.
Yeah.
I'll be straight with you. Are you going to be loyal to this administration or the last administration?
Well, and now we know why he asked that question. Now we know why. Because tell me that Peter Strzok was loyal. Tell me he was loyal.
No.
Tell me he was loyal to the other agents in the field that served in the FBI. No, he wasn't. And neither was Comey. I don't believe he was. He wasn't. He was loyal to a cause. It became political for him, and it's very clear. And I know that FBI director is often a political position. Yes, I get it. Except for the fact that Comey himself came out and talked about and preached with that arrogant attitude before Congress about protecting the integrity of those agents in the field, and he was going to do that. Oh, you mean right before or right after you ran to your buddy? You mean right before or right after you made that book deal? You mean right before you sat down with George Stephanopoulos or right after? When is that you're protecting the integrity of the agency? Exactly. It's laughable.
I wonder if George asks those questions that you just asked. That would be my question.
I'm wondering.
George, did you ask any of Eric's questions?
Yeah.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. This is Red Eye Radio.
All across America, 866-90-RED-EYE. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome, and good morning. Thanks for being here. In the news, Paul Ryan, Speaker of the House, to retire.
I wanted to share with you a little of what I just told my colleagues a few minutes ago. You realize something when you take this job. It's a big job with a lot riding on you, and you feel it. But you also know that this is a job that does not last forever. You realize that you hold the office for just a small part of our history, so you better make the most of it. It's fleeting, and that inspires you to do big things. And on that score, I think we have achieved a heck of a lot. You all know that I did not seek this job. I took it reluctantly, but I have given this job everything that I have. And I have no regrets whatsoever for having accepted this responsibility. This has been one of the two greatest honors of my life. The job provides incredible opportunities. But the truth is, it's easy for it to take over everything in your life. And you can't just let that happen. Because there are other things in life that can be fleeting as well. Namely, your time as a husband and a dad, which is the other great honor of my life. That's why today I am announcing that this year will be my last one as a member of the House.
So there you go. And he says he wants to spend more time with family, and saying that when he became Speaker, his oldest was 13. Now they're all teenagers, and if he serves another term, well, then they will only have known him before they went to college as a weekend dad, and he just said he can't do that.
Yeah.
I take him at his word for that, because he's actually mentioned that before. He mentioned that when he became Speaker of the House.
Well, he did. He talked about it. He said, the biggest reason that I'm reluctant is because this position as Speaker is going to require even more time. And you're here, but then if you're at home, you're campaigning. Especially in the House, right. You're always campaigning at home.
Every 2 years, yep.
Yeah.
And so he and the other point is, when we went back into his career, remember when he came in, before 2000, because I believe this is his 20th year, he said.
Right.
So, I mean, he came in really after the wave and the mindset before he became a member of Congress of seeing what Gingrich and the Republicans did. And I think that a part of Paul Ryan, no matter whether you view him as they became part of the establishment or whatever, what his goals always were. And if you remember, even as recently as 2012, when he ran with Mitt Romney, his goal was what? To balance the budget and get entitlement control. And he really did. I mean, there were a variety of different plans out there that were being talked about at that time. Remember the penny plan and all that? And Ryan came up with what he believed was the best plan that could actually pass Congress. And that was a 30-year plan to balance the budget.
Yeah.
It was like, was it 30? I thought it was 30.
Yeah, it was 30.
Went in like 20. Okay.
Yeah, it was 30 years.
And I know it was 20 or 30, whatever, but it was a very, very long-term plan. It went nowhere because Democrats said it was way too radical and would kill old people and starve young kids. Mm-hmm. And so, that never came. And then Obama became president. Mm-hmm. And then President Obama was there. And then near the end of in December, was it? November, December of October? It was in the fall of 2015 when he became Speaker of the House after Boehner left. Mm-hmm. And he did so reluctantly. And because he did not say, sorry, the deal that Boehner made, we're going to start over again on this when it came to the budget, he was viewed as being part of the establishment. He said, look, that's their deal. We'll start fresh here. After the House and the plan to cut taxes came up, he really fulfilled, I think, probably half of what his goals were. One was to get pro-growth tax policy, and the other one was to get entitlement reform and balance the budget. I think he realizes that he's never going to get that because that's not a possibility in the next 15 years, not with the Republican Party moving left on spending issues where it's not a problem anymore. The budget that just passed would have caused outrage among the Republican ranks, except for a few in the House and the Senate, crickets.
Yep.
And I mean, and I don't mean just from Congress. I mean from the rank and file. I mean here on talk radio. Mm-hmm. 2 years ago back in 15, 2.5 years ago, when when he got in and the whole Boehner deal, our phones blew off people were calling like crazy. Mm-hmm. This has to be stopped. We can't put up with this. The Republican Party has moved left when it comes to spending. Mm-hmm. Maybe not on taxes, but on spending. So I think he realized I've gone as far as I can go. Yeah. I can't go any further. Well, and it's time for somebody else to get in there. And as you said during, was it just the top of the hour break here? You said anybody who gets in now is going to know what they're walking into.
Well, this is the one thing that no one is going to discuss just yet because we don't know who these people are, especially you look at the number of districts, and this is what the media is focusing on. They're focusing on the whole, right, in terms of what it says for the president and having dozens of Republicans that have decided not to run for re-election. All right, you can have that discussion. But then parlaying that into a huge blue wave automatically simply because that's happening I think is premature. And the reason is because of those districts, many of them are going to be strongholds for Republicans. Okay? Now, that's not a given. PA 18 is a prime example.
But what did they run?
But here's the thing. They ran a conservative Democrat, a gun-toting, pro-Second Amendment, ex-military, conservative Democrat.
No more gun control Democrat.
Yes. And that's clearly the vision of the party for the future,
right?
For the Democrats, right?
That's the mainstream of the Democratic Party right now.
I'm sure that's exactly what they're going to be focusing on. Mm-hmm. Let's get more gun-toting guys out there to run in those districts. No. The guy that won was a conservative Democrat, but he won as a conservative. That's not going to be the case in all these districts. Now, maybe that's their tactic. Maybe they go out and find in some of these, because if you look at the numbers in the district in Wisconsin, Paul Ryan's district, he's won pretty handily, over the better part of 2 decades. So he's had very few issues. There were rumors going around in 2016. Look at the numbers tanking. He won. He performed very well in that district. Now, that's what you have to look at. Each of those districts. In the Senate, it's not a given that those blue seats are going to remain blue in the Senate. I don't make predictions, but I won't parlay this, these Republicans leaving into an automatic blue wave. Because the one thing that we have to consider is that the Republicans that do decide to get in the race or the races in those districts or states to jump in where other Republicans are not going to run for re-election is the fact that they know full well what they're in for. Mm-hmm. They know the president. They know his tactics. They know the uphill battle. They may not have the experience of a Paul Ryan, but they'll know full well what the president is like to deal with. I don't think anyone really has a question about that anymore. So that being said, they'll have to run based on that. And if they win, my question is, what does the makeup of the Republican Party look like with those new Republicans that do come into power? Whether they get the majority or not, I think, is the question.
And any speaker and or minority leader of the Republican Party next year has taken the job willingly, believing that they can make an impact. A couple of other things that you and I talked about is what forgot here in the whole blue wave yesterday. Well, that's it. That's it. The Republicans are done. Ryan's gone. Mm-hmm. The white flag is up. There is so much discussion about politics where we actually don't discuss the substance of the politics, which is the issues. Where does America stand on the issues right now with the Republicans?
Right.
The America does not stand. If 2018 is a vote on sanctuary cities, Republicans win. If you take that one issue out, if you take one issue,
right.
If it's a referendum on illegal immigration, Republicans win. Mm-hmm. If it's a election on repealing the Second Amendment, Republicans win. If it's about tax cuts, Republicans win. If it's about, I'm looking at it from a one-issue thing, if it's about spending in the national debt, flip a coin.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Yeah. No, seriously.
Flip a coin on that one because I can't tell you. But on all the other major issues, there's a total difference. The Democrat Party is still a party of what? Identity politics, separation of people by their physical and sexual characteristics.
Yep.
That's what they're about.
Yeah.
They're about creating victim and oppressor and totally dividing and continuing to divide more their constituency. Don't sit there and tell me that I'm full of it. Why? Talk to Tim Ryan. Talk to Joe Manchin. Tim Ryan, who challenged Nancy Pelosi. They'll tell you.
They know.
We have to stop being the party of identity politics.
Yep, they know full well.
They've said it. The other thing that was taken for granted is that the Democrats want Nancy Pelosi, if she became Speaker of the House, to continue being the leader of the party, of the House. Mm-hmm. Really?
Yeah, I don't.
Really now?
Because it's one thing in her role right now to put her back as Speaker. She's not the future, because what you have to consider if you're the party, you have to consider using that leverage, having a speaker, if they win in November, to be the next, basically the future of the party, to get them to 2020, because that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to leverage that, get some things accomplished if you can between this year and the end of 2020. Or January 2019 and the end of 2020, in order to set the party up for victory in 2020. She's not the future.
Also coming up, the Rosenstein story, where he allows Nunes and Gowdy to review that FBI memo. And the James Comey going to be on TV on Sunday night.
All right.
Compares Trump to a mob boss.
Okay.
That's the headline. That and more on the way, plus your calls and comments, 866-90-RED-I.
Last week, USDA announced funding would be available for producers impacted by certain natural disasters through a new program, the Wildfires and Hurricanes Indemnity Program, WHIP. Agriculture Secretary Sonny Perdue told Senate lawmakers Wednesday that work is ongoing to craft details related to an upcoming sign-up period, adding,
I would give ourselves a time period probably of next week to have some announcement of that.
One component of WHIP discussed by the Secretary.
We are anticipating announcing a 50% advance of anticipated losses.
The Farm Service Agency will oversee the WHIP program and future payments. The program, created through the recently passed FY18 federal omnibus funding package, requires producers sign up to begin by no later than mid-July. And while
it takes a while to get the software in the FSA offices aligned with the applications,
Secretary Perdue hopes WHIP sign-up can begin in June. I'm Rod Bain reporting for the U.S. Department of Agriculture in Washington, D.C.
The USDA report is a service of Cenex Roadmaster XL Premium Highway Diesel Fuel.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-EYE.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. Facing legal action, Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein allowed Rosenstein.
Mm-hmm.
I always have trouble because of Harvey Weinstein. He messed up everything for me. It's the second time today. Allowed House Intelligence Committee Chairman Representative Devin Nunes, I got his name right, and Representative Trey Gowdy to view the FBI memo that instigated the Bureau's counterintelligence investigation of contacts between Russia and the Trump campaign. Nunes confirmed on Wednesday. The meeting came a day after Nunes threatened to take legal action, including contempt proceedings and impeachment against both the deputy director and the FBI director, Christopher Wray, for failing to produce a clean copy of the memo known as an electronic communication, or EC, that was responsive to a August 2017 committee subpoena. This is something that they had asked for last August.
Yeah.
Although the subpoenas issued by the committee in August of 2017 remain in effect, I'd like to thank the Deputy Attorney General for his cooperation today. Nunes responded. When asked on Fox News if he would hold the officials in contempt of Congress, Nunes says, "We're not just going to hold them in contempt. We have a plan to hold in contempt and to impeach. We're not messing around here." Now, that would have been a long road. I don't know if that would have ever happened because you would have had to get the leadership to agree to it.
Right. Yeah. I mean,
you would have had to get Paul Ryan to agree.
And that's what I wondered when the news broke that they were, going to finally get that memo. Then I wondered, okay, but does that mean that the threat worked, or, what was it that I guess did work after all this time? As you mentioned, this goes back to August. Trey Gowdy's been very vocal about this, and more recently, of course, Nunes as well, when they're just trying to get the very memo that was the genesis of this.
Right.
This whole thing.
We should know about the investigation, and the first copy was heavily redacted. The second copy was redacted to the point where they still couldn't make any sense out of it. This one, government sources told Fox News that they were able to view the two-page memo with relatively few redactions. The source described those redactions as minimal and justified.
Okay.
So, again, haven't heard anything or any leaks that have come out here at this moment. Meanwhile, a source present at the taping says James Comey interview with ABC's George Stephanopoulos, airing Sunday at 10 p.m. as a 2020 special, is going to shock the president and his team. In an ABC promo, Stephanopoulos says Comey compared Trump to a mob boss. Sources say that Comey's comments will generate headlines and certainly add more meat to the charges swirling around Trump.
Well, if he is indeed a mob boss, what would be shocking to him? I don't know of anything that anybody could say that would be shocking to a mob boss.
Well, again, as you stated before, Comey was the one who wouldn't tell the public that Trump was not a part of the criminal investigation.
Right.
And then the Robert Mueller said it just a month ago,
right.
that he told it to his lawyers. You're not a part of the criminal.
So he's not part of a criminal investigation, can't identify one crime, but yet he's a mob boss. Okay. Here's your forecast.
Weather headlines this Thursday. Stormy weather continues across the Pacific Northwest and Northern Rockies. Critical fire weather conditions across a large part of the plains and Southwest continues. An area of heavy snowfall in the west will be east of I-15 in the state of Montana over to the North and South Dakota borders along I-90 and portions of I-94. You'll want to be careful in those areas. We'll have heavy rain today on I-5, Northern California to Seattle. High pressure over New Mexico. We'll see continued dry conditions for the desert Southwest and critical fire weather conditions in place there. Could see some pop-up thunderstorms today from central Texas up through the Arklatex and the lower Tennessee Valley. As we move into the upper Midwest and Great Lakes, we have areas of freezing rain possible, mainly north of I-90. There's your national forecast from Red Eye Radio. I'm meteorologist John Trout.
Thanks so much, John. 866-90 Red Eye.
Age of division is over. Red Eye Radio.
And he is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara, 866-90 Red Eye. Thanks so much for being here. Let's head back to you on a number of topics, James Comey and everything going on with the rating. I was just reading a part of the interview that Cohen did with CNN on the raid and all that, and where that may be going. But I think the consensus is even in now that it's got nothing to do with Russia. It has to do with Stormy Daniels or something else.
Right.
But let's head to John in Pittsburgh. John, hi. You're on Red Eye Radio. Welcome to the show.
Gentlemen, good morning. To the
Good morning.
point.
Yes.
I watch liberal media frothing at the mouth that Mueller's going to get him. I watch conservative media. They're worried that Mueller's going to get him. And according to the best legal scholar minds that we have today, and a lot of them Democrats, they can't get him. He cannot be indicted. The only thing they can do is present evidence to the House and the Senate of crimes, and they have to vote to overwhelmingly remove him from office, and they don't have the votes. So that's not going to happen. So I don't know what the big fuss is. Let Mueller do his job. They can't get him.
Well, no, I think the hope here, John, actually what has changed in recent months, but certainly after Paul Ryan stepping down, this is from the Democrats' perspective, is that they can run on we will impeach him. Give us the power to do it, and we will impeach him and remove him from office. Now, you're right. As it stands right now, there's really nothing actionable. In fact, Mueller himself apparently has said that at this point he's not he's not the target of a criminal investigation. So what we don't know is we don't know what's in the warrant for Cohen, the raid on Cohen's office. We don't know a number of things here. I think it's really premature. I'm with you on that, and thank you, John. I think it's really premature to say that this is going to bring down the president. The Democrats will run on a number of things. But, in fact, the only thing they have to run on is we will remove him from office, we will defeat him, or we will block him. We will not let him. Either way, it's the anti-Trump vote. They have nothing that they themselves or they as a party can run on.
Yeah, I think this is perfectly understandable. I don't know if the last caller was being sarcastic or whatever, but of course this is understandable. The media is all over this because the media has been, in part, enabling and creating the narrative that Trump colluded with the Russians to hack the election, and then Trump colluded with the Russians to change the outcome of the election. And what they have found out, they're not idiots. They know that just the opposite happened, that it was the Democrats that did that. So, again, when somebody makes an accusation and sticks by it and is completely wrong, and this is, to me, commonplace that I have seen from so many on the left out there and so many in the mainstream media, They are just hoping every day and hanging on to every little piece of shred of any accusation that's out there, because it's the only place where they can go. They can't backtrack and say, we were wrong, and the Democrats actually did what we accused the Republicans of doing. If you actually look at this from a journalistic mind, you would be questioning, what did the DNC and Hillary do? And you'd be on that consistently. But of course it is. They don't agree. They don't like Donald Trump. They don't agree with the Republicans. They are far left. They are, as we have said before, it's gone way beyond. And this is, I think, the narrative really this week that we've talked about. This has gone way beyond Democrats and liberals and conspiracy to do something. This is about a culture that now exists in the bureaucracy, in our government. This is about the culture that exists in our universities today of not liberalism, because they don't view it as liberalism.
No, they think they're right.
They view the way they think as the absolute truth. The peons, you down there, you way down there, hold it, let me move so I don't step on you. You way down there, all you folks, as my father always says, the poop for the peasants, all you peasants down there, you can have your arguments, but we are the elite. We are the all-knowing. We are the truth. Mm-hmm. And anything that doesn't agree with us, that's why they want to go to the college campuses and shut up people. They don't view that. Well, no, you don't have any freedom of speech because what you believe is wrong. Freedom of speech is only for people that are right. This is a part of their culture. This is after 30 years of this growing in our colleges, in our education system. This is the culture that exists. You didn't need a direct order from President Obama to Lois Lerner. You don't need direct orders coming down because the end justifies the means. That's the culture that now exists on the left, and that's what's so important to understand.
Well, and they, it's not going to change. There's no way. It's totally embedded into their genetics. There's just no way of reversing that, because they've been indoctrinated as children, and then through college, and then on to, their career in the media. They believe they're right. Even Walter Cronkite, after his retirement, basically talked about it. Well, yeah, I was biased, but I thought it was the right thing to do. But at that time, it was, and he really didn't have a problem with it. It was the right thing. I was fighting for a just cause. If you believe it's the right thing, then it's not about bias for you. It's about doing what you think is right.
And I think it's almost 20 years ago, I believe, that are we coming on 20 years or maybe 18, 19 years when Bernard Goldberg wrote Bias?
Right.
And people don't know.
They don't see it.
Bernard Goldberg, worked for Dan Rather, and that's when the blow-up happened, is when, a contractor at his house, I believe it was after a storm, told him, you guys are biased. No, we're not. And he said no. And finally he said, well, if you ever find something that we're biased on, the Dan Rather show, you call me up. Said, I will. Calls him up one day and said, check that story you did on the flat tax. What do you mean? You started out with talking about Steve Forbes. Let's talk about Steve Forbes' tax scheme, not tax plan, scheme.
Right.
So Goldberg goes back and watches it and says, as a journalist, he was right. It was a biased story. He said there was no expert that defended that a flat tax was good. Said the only expert said the flat tax was bad. He said, and this is what Goldberg said, if you're going to do a story and you're a journalist, not an activist, but a journalist, you have gone in and said, Steve Forbes has his tax plan, and here's the tax plan. Here's what he says it will do. And here's a chart of what will do this, and it would be this much across the board. Now, he says it will raise this amount of money. Now, we have found this think tank that says Steve Forbes is right, and this think tank that says Steve Forbes is wrong. And then you play that, you do the story, and then you're done. Didn't happen. They called it a tax scheme. And if you know Steve Forbes, not really a radical, is he?
No.
And Steve Forbes is somebody who talks economic ideas all the time. And so they called it tax scheme, and then they only had one expert or the experts that were in that story all were against the flat tax. And Goldberg said, look, this isn't even on where I stand on taxes or anything like that. That was a biased story. And he went to Dan Rather, and Dan Rather was furious with him. Furious. And basically said, as I'll never forget the part where Goldberg said, I fought for this country. He was in the Marines or whatever, Dan Rather. He goes, he took it as if I was insulting his patriotism. Right. And all was simply was telling him is your story was biased. And as Goldberg said, he goes, and way back then I said, really? Because we always knew this was a conspiracy and they're talking about it and everything else. And he goes, this isn't like a conspiracy. It's a culture that exists in the elites. They all hang out together. They all think the same, and they don't think of themselves as liberals. They think of themselves as the absolute good and truth. They are the moral truth. And anything that doesn't agree with them is not the moral truth and cannot even be discussed. He said, so when I went to Dan Rather to talk to Dan Rather and say, look, this is not journalism, we're not being journalists, I wasn't questioning his journalistic integrities. I was questioning his patriotism. Because that's how they...
He took it personally.
He goes, they took it personally because they are the truth. They don't consider themselves liberal or conservative. They consider themselves the truth. We are the leaders of the truth. And that's why that culture that exists, that's why they don't want a Ben Shapiro to speak at, by the way, welcome, Ben, to our company.
Now we can call him colleague.
Yes. If you ever hear Ben Shapiro, Ben Shapiro he's a great mind. I've always said, for his age, a great mind. He will be the George Will, I believe, of the millennials. And he's got a lot of years left because he is. You want a critical thinker, that guy's a critical thinker.
Oh, yeah, sure.
And why would you want to ban him?
Right.
Why do they wish to ban everybody and we don't wish to ban anybody? We want everybody to be able to speak. Why to get to that core of that mindset? Why do they? Because we want to have the discussion. We want to, and I believe it's two things. First off, they believe it's the truth. Number two, when you get down to it, and maybe subconscious in them, people don't like it when they find out their arguments aren't strong and they rebel immediately and they don't want to have the discussion because they sense it. I think they're smart enough. There's two things going on there. There's a part of it's part of the culture, and the other part of it is these arguments are so easy to defeat that they never want to address it because they've been hit with it before and it embarrasses them, but their emotions tell them. It's their emotions telling them that, no, we are the greater morality. We are the greater truth because we believe we care. And therefore, this emotional decision that we've come to, that this is what works, has to be it and nothing else can be tolerated.
Well, and this is something you saw with, if you were listening to Zuckerberg and his testimony and talking about that bias and this whole bogus idea that they wanted to be a forum for all thoughts and all ideas. Well, no, you don't. Because then he gets into, well, we don't allow hate speech. Well, but you're defining the hate speech. And you are going to put your markers on what you consider to be hate speech.
You can't define... You say, we don't allow hate speech. We ask you to define hate speech, and you said that's a very hard thing to do.
Well,
that's the problem.
But you're doing it. It's not a hard thing to do if you've actually defined it within your company, and that's the whole point. And so, but when he talks about, this is Silicon Valley, and of course it's very far left. Yeah, we know that. But they believe, it's very simple. They believe they're doing justice. It's as the editor at BuzzFeed said, we believe this is the role of our reporters.
Right.
And that it's not anything new. It's not anything that's just happened over the last couple of years. The left has been creating this for a long, long time. And it's done through indoctrination and teaching them at their very earliest of ages, as soon as they can, get in front of them to influence those minds. you start influencing them with certain images and using certain words and saying, well, it has to be this way. And I'm telling you, there's been little challenge to them in their lives because, as you said, Gary, they all hang out, they all think the same thing, and they believe they're right. They're justified in doing it.
866-90-RED-EYE.
The dates and location for the 36th annual Shell Rotella Super Rigs contest are set. Dave Waterman from Shell has the details.
We are going to be at White's Travel Center in Rafine, Virginia. It's a little bit outside of Lexington, Virginia, right off of I-81 and I-64. It was designed way back when as a way for Shell Rotella to give back to the trucking community, appreciation for all they did and all the support of our brand. It's an event that really encourages truckers to get together, whether they're going to show a show caliber truck or just their daily driver that might have some scratches and dings in it. It's open to all of them. And in fact, we encourage, as you know, the working truck. Judging, of course, is going to take place Thursday through Saturday. We're going to have a light contest taking place on Thursday, and then we'll do a truck parade down to Old Town Lexington. There's also be health checks available for truckers on site. We're going to do the scavenger hunt again so folks can walk away with prizes. Just on the Shell Rotella Super Rigs part of it, it's up to $25,000 in both cash and prizes.
They want to learn more. Where do they go?
Well, they can go to Rotella.com. They can also go to White'sTravelCenter.com.
This Super Rigs update is a service of Shell Rotella.
Coming up, more with Gary McNamara and Eric Harley. It's Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. I'm just sitting here thinking to myself, I go to sleep, I wake up. What's the story going to be? That's the world that we live in. And I will tell you, the vast majority of times, just going to, because I'll go home, go to sleep about 6 o'clock, maybe quarter after 6. I'll wake up at 10. Every morning I wake up, it's like, wow. I've just been asleep. And you know, as you said, you were sick one day, and boom, the whole everything changes.
Well, I'm following it and can't talk about it. I'm sick, still following the news, and there's no outlet to talk about it. But so we got a really great Friday show, the bonus show, coming up.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One.